Cool. We are live for our first show on Sunset to South. My name is Fernando. I'm your resident financial dude. And Brad, Brad is our resident real estate dude. Or gentleman, whatever you want to go by. I couldn't really think of anything catchy, but yeah. So this is our first show. Really stoked and a little nervous, I guess, for our first show together. We did kind of a trial run last week on the other comic book channel, but this is our thing together, specifically about real estate, finance, mortgages, all that good stuff. So, how was your day gone so far? Your Wednesday?
Very good. Yeah, I did. Today was kind of a paperwork day for me, but this week's been good. I've been doing some marketing, a lot of marketing stuff, just kind of staying in front of people. I'm a big fan of, and this is if you don't do this, this is something I think anybody can apply that are in like sales type businesses, but I send all of my past clients birthday cards, like handwritten birthday cards, and people seem to really like that stuff. So I make sure I take the time to do that. So this was birthday card, get caught up on birthday cards this week and do some email marketing and that kind of stuff. And we'll get into this a little later, but I was supposed to show a couple of houses this afternoon, and we kind of lost the opportunity to do that. So we'll get into that. It kind of ties into what we're going to talk about today. So, but I'm seeing the effects of some of the articles we're going to share. I'm kind of seeing that hit close to home in the area that I work. So how was your week? How's your week been?
It's been pretty good. I think, being here on the Brad's, if no one knows, is in South Carolina, and I am in Washington. And we were really gloomy the past few days. It is a blistering 60 degrees right now. I am sweating under this a little bit, which is so funny, right? But no, the client base is kind of, it's starting to tick up a little bit. We're getting more inquiries, just general kind of stuff. Back in 2021, 2020, beginning of 2022, we couldn't put the phone down. And it was like, I'll get back to you like in an hour, hopefully, or two. And now I'll be on the phone with a client for an hour or two. And it's just a difference of conversation you have with people. And, there's no anxiety. There's no like fear. There's more of just like, oh gosh, am I asking too many questions? Am I asking the right questions? So a lot of information based type of conversations I'm having with clients versus like, just give me how much it is and I'll say yes or no kind of thing,
Right.
But it's been good. It's been steady. Yeah.
I find that those conversations have a lasting impression too. Like people tend to remember, like that sets you apart in what you do. That sets you apart. So they're accustomed to somebody treating them like their paycheck instead of taking the time to really educate them on the process. And so that's awesome that you do that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it's not just the buyers, it's the real estate agents too. I think what's so nice about what we're trying to do here and kind of inform people, I think it's on a personal finance side, but professional side too, whoever's watching the show, there's been kind of this disrelationship, I would say, and not nothing negative, but more of an assumption I feel with realtors and mortgage professionals, meaning that the relationship is we're not a team and we can't succeed together. And I feel that sometimes, as a mortgage professional, we do bring some of the bad news sometimes or the reality. And I feel like real estate agents, like some just like are like, all right, well, what do we need to do to make this deal happen? Others will, it's like, well, what happened? And you just have to, kind of explain what the occurrence is, and then, take a deep breath and go from there. I would say that the real estate agent on the selling and the selling side and the listing side are just as important as the client that we represent together. I always feel like that trinity of people involved. I don't want to disappoint anyone on, I want everyone at 100% versus like 190 and 85 kind of thing. So, and you, and of course, like on your side, you want to work with mortgage brokers or mortgage professionals that know their stuff and are easy to talk to. Just makes everything a lot easier. You know,
Yeah, I was just thinking that's the approach you described is kind of what I shoot for. I'm a big communicator, so I like to make sure if everybody's on the same page, it's hard to, you know, things just tend to go more smoothly when everybody's on
yeah,
the same page. So I love when I have a listing and the lender reaches out to me to say, "Hey, I'm looking forward to working with you, and um, you know, I'll give you weekly updates and that kind of stuff," and they really stick to that. That's that it feels good because there's enough anxious moments potentially in these transactions to that you tend to really appreciate when things go smoothly, and a lot of that's attributed to the communication, and everybody wants the same thing.
hmm
The buyer wants to get to the closing table, the seller wants to, the agents, the lender, everybody, we all want the same thing. So
yeah,
however we get there, and the stuff that goes on to get us there, a lot of times I think buyers and sellers don't realize what it actually took to get to the closing table, to be sitting in the attorney's office and signing documents. A lot of times buyers and sellers don't realize what it takes to get to that point, and there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that has to transpire in order to get there.
yeah, and I've we haven't dealt with this yet, but the kind of the one thing that we dealt with early in my career was, you know, the values of homes coming down to where the renegotiation has to occur with the selling and listing agent. Um, and I think one show we will probably do in the future is like kind of the whole transactional process of what the easiest way to to buy a home is, and like what the because I think it's a very stressful, right, transaction. It's like it's the most important purchase you'll ever have.
And the
Um,
most expensive
and the most
in a
expensive
lot of.
and most legal, all that stuff, right? And it's exciting too. Um, but definitely that 30-day window can be a little stressful just because of like, oh, you're waiting the appraisal, you're waiting inspection. What's my rate going to be? And are we going to close on time? Those are the things I always think of and stuff. But so yeah, we'll definitely brush up on that stuff. We have 2 lives so far. We're up to 3. So just trying to get our kind of get our foot, our foundation going right now and stuff. I do appreciate everyone that is tuning in live and watching us and supporting us through the channel. I'm sure people that are watching know how Brad and I met, but we met through our love and passion for comic books and collectibles, and just I don't even really realize how we were talking about finance. Maybe just in a group chat or something, but come to find out that Brad is a realtor on the East Coast, and I'm a mortgage professional based on the West Coast. And we just wanted to, I think we share that same kind of passion, or I wouldn't say passion, but more of that wanting to help the financial real estate community on the reality is of what news is out there, as opposed to like the stuff you see on TikTok or on YouTube or any Instagram kind of show, which is if they're pretty close to like the reality in a way, but everyone's different too. Yeah,
So last week when we were dipping our toe in the water to do a little test run,
yeah,
um, I think we learned a lot about each other's markets. I mean, just in that, like, you messaged me like 2 hours before and said, "Hey, you want to go live tonight?" And I was like, sure, yeah, why not?
yeah,
Let's do it." But I think those conversations led to a lot of understanding, and maybe like you even mentioned like, oh, I see that it's not, everything's not bleak everywhere. Like all markets are not the
Mm-hmm.
same.
Mm-hmm.
And I even shared some we might need to download that video and post it on the new site just so people can go back and see that, because I think there was some interesting information about the development that's going on here in South Carolina and a lot of those
Big
things that are
time.
going to affect me. And I wouldn't, if I were an outsider looking in, I probably wouldn't think that South Carolina would be like a real big electric vehicle hub. Just being in the South, you wouldn't think that, but that a lot of our future growth is kind of involves that. So it's nice to hey, Michael Baker popped in. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by.
We're just getting started. We're just
Yeah,
kind of
just
hanging out a little bit. So thanks for joining, Mike.
But so it was interesting to see, like, that some of those things that we've got in place here are going to create jobs, which are going to create opportunities, hopefully for me and for people who do what you do.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see, just like, oh, well, this is the way it is there. And, things are, hey, I've got maybe got some hope now where the news is all, seems to kind of, shade towards the negative stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really, I think, the primary thing that had me excited about doing this on a regular basis was just learning a little bit more about what's going on. And then the chat last week in that
It's amazing.
just random dry run was, filling in some blanks for us. I learned a lot just from the guys in the chat. So that was great.
Yeah, I think we're really going to try and cultivate this community, from the communities that we're part of, that we've joined, and just from other people, and hopefully they get a sense of just like, oh, this isn't like really dire, even though I watch insert national news channel. I'm just going to pick a random city. I've never been to Chicago. It's a they call that the second city, right? But I don't really know what the real estate is there. It doesn't affect me really, because I just never been there, personally. But obviously, and like you said, like in South Carolina, like you would never think that'd be like the electric or possible, electric car EV startup hub, whatever you want to call it. But that's where, if you are in that area, even if like you're not even in South Carolina, but like a neighboring state, that will affect you positively, because people are going to move from either like, from the West Coast or, down south to South Carolina for opportunities, and it's going to affect the neighboring states and all that. So yeah, I really had no idea. I know Boeing was moving some jobs over there. That was years ago, and there were options for people to move from Boeing here in Seattle to Everett to South Carolina, and a lot of people were like, "Shoot, South Carolina sounds pretty cool." It's probably a lot warmer. There's more beach over South Carolina than there is here in Washington.
It was 92 yesterday.
There you go. I mean, where's my ticket? You know what I mean? So yeah. Anyway, so I guess we could get into our slides. We're about 13 minutes in. I got 3 live so far. Again, thanks everyone for joining, who's watching here for our inaugural show. And let's get into it. Now, me and Brad and myself, we slaved over these slides. Let me tell you, we didn't really, but we had a pretty good time getting through these and just kind of learning all that. But I think it was pretty easy for me, at least, to kind of get this going, just because I kind of know your personality and all that, and kind of what we were going to talk about. So yeah, let's get this going here. Ooh, give me 1 second here. All right, so this is our presentation for the week of May 10th, Wednesday, May 10th, 2023. We're going to go over a couple topics here. I'll start off with current financial markets. Brad and myself will talk about West and East Coast real estate and how the differences and the similarities as well. I'll give you your credit tip of the day, and Brad will end it with his segment of Brad's The More You Know. I don't know if any Gen Z people know what that saying is, but I'm sure you recognize that saying, right, Brad?
Yeah, we'll keep it around until NBC hits us up, drops the cease and desist.
Yeah,
But
right,
we'll,
right,
we'll
right.
we'll
I was
keep it
trying to
for as long as we can.
I was trying to find a video to do that. The more you know, but I figured the picture would suffice. But I thought it was a nice throwback to when I
We could
watched
have
NBC.
to really blow the Gen Zers. We could have done like a Schoolhouse Rock or something
Oh,
for.
they wouldn't know what's coming. They wouldn't know what's coming. All right, so just some equity stock market stuff for you guys. This happened earlier in the week, and I love this. Some of the stuff's outdated, but it's more just kind of FYI type things to look out for. So we had a couple. It's earnings season. Brett, I don't know how closely you watch like equities and stocks, but do you watch that just to kind of keep up with the markets and whatnot? And how does that affect you?
I don't typically.
Mhm.
That it's the reason why I look forward to your daily updates.
Okay.
That's my nugget. So I've got, since you started doing that, I've gotten more of this kind of information in my brain than I have in all my years prior.
Oh, good.
So
Good.
yeah,
Well, that's
and you
awesome.
get a lot of great feedback on that. I mean, that's a lot of people really seem to enjoy that, look forward to that every day. So
Well, cool. I'm glad to hear that. And I'm always open to hearing like other companies or what people want to know about. I just kind of I think of companies that are just kind of off the radar or ones that people know and just kind of an economic headline to kind of look out for. And so Palantir, I brought this company up. The CEO is he's quite genius like. He's almost he reminds me a lot of like the PayPal guys. Very innovative. He's a mathematician of some sort. I'm not going to go into too in depth with about him, but this was a meme stock back in the pandemic times. It was it was created out of a SPAC company. So basically, it's a special purpose assets company. So basically, what that means is it's kind of like an IPO, but there's basically cash sitting aside. A company is presented or the corporation is presented with a plan or whatnot, and Palantir merged with this company, and it was this stock was up to like 22 bucks a share, and it fell on hard times just because of earnings reports and all that. Well, it had a pretty good earnings report, projected higher, and it's now in the double digits. It was at one point around 750 a share. Now it's almost 10 bucks, which is kind of interesting. And then kind of like a forefront, which I think should be on everyone's radar. I think jobs are very obviously like if you don't have a job, you probably can't buy a house, you probably can't invest, you probably can't take out a mortgage. So I thought this is interesting to watch. LinkedIn laid off 764 employees and it killed its China app. It's not a huge amount of employees being terminated like on a whole, but LinkedIn is a Microsoft company, so just kind of be aware of, when companies report that they're laying employees off, it's more of like, is this the end of the layoffs or is this the sign of more things to come? If you're seeing more companies lay off people, that could hurt the economy and inflation, all those numbers and all that. And then I'm sure you're watching this, whether you're political or not, it's just something I just wanted to point out. But the debt ceiling is kind of a major headwind that I think people should be on the lookout for coming in June. Essentially, there hasn't been a budget, reconciled. We are going to be run out of money come this mid June or sometime, and it's there. We've never not paid our bills before, but it's definitely something to be on the lookout for because it definitely could affect financial markets, whether it's real estate, mortgages, bonds, what have you. There was a little bit of fear contagion this last Friday and then this past week. So it's just something to kind of be on the lookout for. What is on the East Coast where you're from, Brad? Is there talks of like, oh, the debt ceiling needs to be figured out? Is there fear of it? Does it deter people from like buying a home or like investing?
not really, but I would
Mhm.
say you asked last week about the bank failures and that are happening on the West Coast, and if I had any feedback from my clients on the East. on the East Coast, if if they were talking about it. I think this is I hear this a little bit more because this is more of a it seems like every time we get to this point, they run down to the wire every time because both sides are trying
Yeah.
to figure out like they're lobbying for their stuff, and so I would imagine we'll sweat it out to the very end and figure something out in the 11th hour
Yeah.
and be done with it. But yeah, that it this to me is yeah, I mean it's concerning. You can't, I don't know, it's scary, man. You can't just keep printing more money to cover things. And but yeah, I think they'll figure it out, but it's just nerve-wracking. It's that it goes down to the wire every time, it seems like.
Yeah. I always like what entertains me about the debt ceiling is there's always like one guy fighting and the other one on one side and another guy fighting on the other. And then there's two people like in the back or three or four, and they come together and they come out with a deal and get everything going. And that's what I always find interesting. Um, when observing it, quote unquote. I would say like the likelihood of the US defaulting on their debt, is so it's so low, and I'm not really worried about it. But I guess it's more of like, how does the market going to react to it in the next coming weeks? And if you are investing, or if you're looking at companies that you want to invest in and you're worried about the looming debt ceiling, it might be an opportunity for you to just keep an eye on different equities or stocks or opportunities with the fear that we will default on our debt. So just a couple of things to think about throughout the
So
week.
ask you a question. So do you
Yeah.
find, because you look at this stuff regularly, do
Yeah.
you find that the market responds, you have confidence that it will get figured out? Does the market share that confidence, or do they react as if, oh no, we're coming down to the wire, it may not get done? How, like, what in the past, how have you seen it react in the past? Because it
In
comes
the
up all the time. But
Yeah. Yeah, no, good. It's a great question. The one debt ceiling situation that I remember being like, oh my gosh, and this is like I just wasn't really versed in equities or whatnot, was back in 2011. And Obama was president. We had, I think, the Senate and House was Republican dominated. So it was really tough to get, things kind of going because of the party dominance on the House and the Senate. That was scary because we also had, we were just coming out of, the recession, the Great Recession. And for some reason, that always stands out. As far as debt ceiling events, that one always just stands out to me because it really felt that we were gonna. I mean, the 11th hour they finally came up with something, but up until then, there was so much, headlines. There was so much. There was so many just indicators that we weren't going to make a deal and we were going to default on our debt because of all the looming like stuff going around the world. Now, that was 12 years ago, and information travels so much more quickly, obviously, and I think that's the big thing is information. So the market right now hasn't really reacted to it. I think the market's just looking at earnings reports as of right now. But the focus probably in a couple weeks, like especially like around like Memorial Day weekend, I think it's you're going to see either it's going to calm down or it's going to flare up a little more as people kind of come back from vacation and are like, oh shoot, there's a real world that we had to worry about again. So yeah, but I think ultimately they'll come to, like you said, they'll come to the 11th hour and they'll kick the can down the road, cut some things here and there, and then everything will be fine. But it might be an opportunity again. That's something to kind of look into. Okay, West Coast. West Coast. I meant to put East Coast. I'm sorry, but yeah. So I just found some facts for both the West Coast and East Coast kind of areas, but I specifically targeted Washington and South Carolina. So, and this is all data from last April. Home sales in Washington State actually declined almost a full percent in April, year over year. I didn't look up unit sales. I just want to go by percentages, but I thought that was pretty in line. I actually am shocked that it wasn't less, but we have supply issues here, like you wouldn't believe. And in turn, actually, home prices declined only 1% as well. I thought this was just it just doesn't make sense to me from like a financial standpoint. I mean, rates have gone up, 2 full percentage points, since a year ago. However, the decline's only 1% here in Washington. Um, Interestingly enough, east of the mountains. So in Washington State, we call it the east of the mountains. So there's like a divide in between kind of like the west part of Washington and the eastern part of Washington. Um, there's actually an increase of 2 to 4% in home prices, and I think that's attuned because the culture here in Washington is that you can work from home. So why would I buy an $800,000 townhome in Seattle and deal with the traffic and just deal with like, whatever? I have 2 kids or 1.5, whatever you want to call it. I can buy that same home or a home with like, a lawn and like, land for like a quarter of the price or like a third of the price. Well, and it's not too bad. It's a lot sunnier and it's a lot warmer east of the mountains as well. And it's only like a 2-hour drive if you go east of the mountains. I think that equated to the 3.4% increase, even with the rates of homes going, because you could sell your house here and just buy one over there on east of the mountains. That's kind of the geographical kind of divide here in Washington that I don't think a lot of people know. The eastern part of the state is very dry. It's flat. It doesn't have. West Coast or the coast cities like Seattle, Tacoma. It's all hills. We're known for our hills, and over there it's like farm country. A lot of wineries. There's a lot of if you drink, do you like beer in general? I guess is the
Yes.
question. Okay, so it's like some amazing amount. 25% of all hops are grown in this area called Yakima,
Oh, that's cool.
Prosser. Yeah, so there's a lot of hops. So that economy over there is like really big, but there's a ton of land. There's a lot of job opportunities, and it's more attractive to work over there because of the work from home life. You could work for, a tech company, Amazon, Microsoft. If you can swing it, you could work over there, and buy a very inexpensive home for a nice price. So kind of interesting stuff. Have you ever
So
been to Washington before, Brad? I think I've asked you that before, but I wasn't sure.
I have not. That'll change. What's up, Wade? That'll change at some point. The second you showed me the Point Break beer, I was sold on scheduling a visit. So
Yeah,
that's one of the as me and Ferd started talking. That's one of the other things we found we had a love for was both of our favorite movies is our favorite movie for both of us is Point Break.
yeah,
So,
definitely.
not the remake.
The original.
Yeah.
And Wade, our resident ex-Washingtonian. Yeah, it's a there are snippets of Washington are very beautiful. It's one of those weird Seattle's one of those weird cities where you can drive 45 minutes and go for a hike for like a mile to 2 miles and be completely out of the city. And that's one of the attractions that people that aren't from here, like New York, for example, like you got to take like the bus and subway, all this stuff to get like out of the city. Here it's just a drive away. It's really close. And we're very green. So if you like greenery, if you like the earth, Washington is the place to be. There's actually on the peninsula is a rainforest, which is I've never been there, but it's an actual rainforest. You look it up. Whenever you have time, there's an actual rainforest you can visit. And then it's like, and Wade definitely described it perfectly. When you cross when you go over to the 509 area code, it's very dry. I love it though. I went to school over there. So it's a little bit of home that kind of like get away from like the city type. My fiance, she actually lives in Prosser, and that's the force I'm talking about. She actually lives in Prosser, where which is east of the mountains over here, and we go back there quite often, and it's a nice escape. It's really pretty out there, for sure. So, next slide here, we got South Carolina prices. Do you want to kind of go over these? I just found these, and I thought I was really impressed actually with South Carolina's um, kind of real estate market. But do you want to kind of go over these? And I found that South Carolina home on a listing
That's
somewhere.
classic. Yeah, that's classic. You got to have a front porch on there with probably with some rocking chairs or a swing or something.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so home sales in South Carolina 4.5% decline. So yeah, we have seen that that be the case. Home sale prices in SC are
It's 10%.
down.
I apologize.
Oh,
They're
that's
actually
okay.
yeah.
All right, home sale prices in South Carolina are 10% increase. Okay. Says okay. Yeah, so yeah, there's not as much inventory. That what you said during your segment of this is absolutely on point because it doesn't make sense. When you would think that um, interest rates go up, you continue to would continue to build, so the supply should increase if the sales go down, but it didn't. And everybody I talked to, it seems like across the United States that was the case. Is that I don't know if there was a decrease in new construction. So here, I've got 3 buyer clients, one of which I helped buy some land, and they're doing a custom built home. 2 others are buying tract homes. So I've got 3 clients who are building homes to move into. So that's a big part of it, and I think we'll see that on one of the. I think that's some information that we've got a little later when we bring those other slides up.
Mm-hmm.
Home transactions continue to be weighed by rise in rates and decline in inventory. Yeah, I mean we're absolutely seeing that. I mean, like I mentioned at the beginning, this afternoon I was supposed to show a buyer client a house, and so the way I set it up for my folks, we'll meet and hit it off and decide we want to work together, and I get an idea of what they're looking for. So,
Mm-hmm.
how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, price range, area, all those critical things. And I set them up on our local MLS, and they'll get. I do an instantaneous feed to them. So once we nail down the criteria, the second a house comes on the market that meets their criteria, they get an email. So I get the same email, so they can text me and say, Brad, the one that just came through, let's go schedule that one for this afternoon or whatever, if you've got time.
Yeah.
So that happened with a house this afternoon, and so I set it up that I'd scheduled to see this afternoon. I set it up first thing this morning. He hit me up last night that he was interested in it. I set it up first thing this morning. I got a text. We were supposed to see it around 2:15, 2:30 today.
Mm-hmm.
I got a text stating that we've received multiple offers, highest and best by 11 p.m. tonight, and we'll make a decision at 10 a.m. So we just kind of took ourselves out of the, I shared that information with him. He thought it wasn't going to pan out. And fortunately, because I've stayed relatively stress-free doing this job that can be very stressful, simply by believing that everything happens for a reason. For some reason, this house wasn't the one.
Right.
And so my clients tend to adopt that same mentality so that they don't get, beat themselves up over missing, these missed opportunities or potential opportunities.
Uh-huh.
So we're just on to the next one. But that tells me we're starting to see that, okay, it's getting warmer. The activity is there, there's still not enough listings.
Yeah. Such a hard
people
thing.
they're jumping back into the buyer pool, and now we're seeing competition go up because a house that's already at the top of my client's budget. Okay, well, how do you win? This might be actually an interesting segment. I won't go into too much detail. How do you win a multiple offer situation? That might be a good segment for us to do. There are some things that you can do. and some concessions that you can make as a buyer to win those bids. But we just kind of, it was already at the top of his price point. So
Yeah.
yeah, the the transactions are certainly influenced by that, but we're seeing that this example would tell me that the sticker shock has worn off of that helps. If
It
but
does.
first time home buyers are not yeah, I've got 300 grand sitting around, let's go buy
Yeah.
a house.
Yeah.
But that's an I need to be working with Wade. He's
He's got
got a lot of
all the
cash
answers,
sitting
right?
around.
I like it. I don't. I don't like I'm worthless
Oh,
if it's a
yeah,
cash
you don't
offer.
want to see that. Yeah, you don't want to.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll contact him later down the road for a refi or HELOC. I'm just kidding.
Well, or suggest perhaps that
Cash
maybe you
out.
don't want to tie all your cash up in
Yeah.
in that. Uh, but yeah, we're seeing that, but this tells me that the sticker shock has worn off a bit on the
Mhm.
rates,
Yeah.
and the news has been maybe a little bit more positive, and ultimately you're dealing with people who are renting, and
Mhm.
I'm going to catch up on the chat here because I've been talking a good bit, but I see a couple of questions in there. But ultimately, if you're renting, ultimately, you want to pay, you want to pay for something that's yours,
Mhm.
investing in something that's yours instead of
Yeah.
investing in something that someone else owns.
Mhm.
Um,
That's a good question for you.
yeah. Hey, that's, I love Charleston. Ferd's heard of Charleston. We've talked about Charleston. You've got family who goes to the beaches
Yeah,
in
they
Charleston.
vacation down there from Jersey, so yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, I guess the main benefit for Florida is the tax situation there. There's no state tax, I think. Is that the
I heard there's like it's very they're very liberal on taxes. Everything else are conservative, but yeah, they're very there's no state tax, and that's why a lot of retirees live down there. And
but as far as Charleston as a city, I mean, it's been a couple of years since this has been the case, but
mhm,
Charleston was voted the number one tourist destination in the world
I believe it.
2 or 3 years in a row, and it's a very rich history. You and I've talked backstage about yeah, okay. So you and I have talked backstage about some of the history stuff in
Mhm,
Charleston, and it's beautiful. I'm a fan. I mean, there's a lot to like. It's a huge foodie destination. A lot of people don't realize the food culture there is there's a lot of fine dining and great food, and then great food at these little dive bars and stuff too. I mean, they've got a very rich food and art culture there. So yeah, I'm a fan. So yeah, if you've got folks considering,
I
yeah,
was thinking the same thing too. That's why I'm laughing. Or like I was like
it's
when you talk about South Carolina, I think that's what being a West Coast person, like, oh, I've never been there. It's got to be like the Patriot, and they eat like
we don't still
I don't
ride
know.
horses, but
Yeah, yeah, right.
it's I mean a lot of that was filmed there. A lot
Yeah,
of
no,
it
I
was
bet.
yeah, a lot of it was filmed there. So yeah, that's it's yeah, the history part is very reminiscent. You'll even see the houses, and there's mansions and plantations and stuff that you can visit there where they um grew a ton of just a lot of commerce. And it's also, we mentioned last week in the impromptu session we had, Charleston's number 8 port city in the United States. So
Yeah, that's
very
really
heavy.
good for
Yeah,
jobs, right? Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah. I was answering some questions in the chat there, in regards to rates and all that. So, the when we were, when the rates started to go up like to 7%, we were expecting, kind of a downturn in prices, but I think there's three things really affecting what we're talking about here. Supply demand. So those are the two top things right now. And kind of what I was alluding to with LinkedIn is employment. Um, Overall, employment's still really strong. And like there's there's restrictions on how you can build, like here, at least in Seattle, because of the water and the environmental issues and just like population. I think like, you know, people, the work from home thing I was talking about earlier, I knew people that were moving to Montana from California and Boise, Idaho, which is, it's a fine city, but it's not like metropolitan. Like their population increased like huge because they're in the southern part of Idaho, so you're really close to Nevada and Colorado and all these different states. So it's like that's actually not a bad hub to kind of move to, if you're concerned that. Yeah, so if there's, and there's inventories of like wood or just building materials that are still on ships on its way over here, and like inflation, it's the home builder margins are very low anyway. So if they're like, shoot, I used to be able to build 10 houses. Now it costs me, and I can only build 5. I still get my margins, right? But like I can only build 5. It's tough for builders to kind of keep up with that demand because the margins are so low. You almost turn into like a volume business, and that's not, when you're selling homes for like 500,000 and it costs you 450. Like that's kind of risky, and so there's a lot of fear in that regard, right? Um, First time home buyers are considered, yeah. I mean, I guess your definition of a first time home buyer is like, so a first time home buyer is someone who hasn't bought a house in 2 years. So like you could, like, for example, and we'll go into detail like another show, but like I'll answer Wade because I appreciate him. Um, if you haven't owned a house in 2 years, so let's say you bought a house in 2000, for example, or sorry, 2020, and you sold in 2020, and you go back to the pool and rebuy a house now, you're considered a first time home buyer again.
That's different here. That's like here we consider first time home buyer to your first,
Like you've never owned a home before ever.
right.
I
Right.
see.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean, you still qualify for those rates as a first time home buyer, and like there's FHA, which is you're kind of 3.5% down. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's you have to, it's like a threshold kind of thing. Um, but yeah, typically like and I don't get a lot of like, if someone's selling their house to buy a new one, then like obviously you're not a first time home buyer, but like you have people, especially here in Washington, um, that someone from California sold their house and they're, oh, I want to figure out what area of Seattle or Bellevue I want to live in, and so they move to another, they go to another area, or they kind of figure out, oh, Bellevue's kind of cool for me. I've been there for 2 years. Yeah, you qualify as a quote unquote first time home buyer. It depends on what. There's different programs though that say if you owned a house for the past 5 years, you don't qualify for that program. Or like there's down payment assistance where you don't need to have any. You don't have to have the full 3.5%. You could have, just closing costs or whatever it is. There's a lot of different programs. We'll probably talk about it in length, like another show, but kind of to expand on Wade's question. Yeah, first time home buyers, it's a range of categories you could fit into that. So anyway, food for thought.
And you
Good
probably
questions, man.
have, yeah, those are excellent. And you probably have, I mean, it's also dependent on their situation. I mean, if they have cash sitting around, they may want to, hey, I want to lower my monthly payment. I'm gonna put more down. It would make more sense. But so it's probably everybody's situation is different. But
Yeah.
I have seen a fair amount of first time home buyer, FHA, lower down payment type deals here as
Yeah.
well.
And typically with the FHA, right, you have a lower interest rate, and that doesn't matter what your credit score is. It's just like you have a lower interest rate. However, you have mortgage insurance that you can't get rid of until you refinance through a conventional, or you wait the 8 to 10 year kind of period of paying mortgage insurance. Typically with FHA, the downside, quote unquote, with FHA is the mortgage insurance is very expensive. But if you don't have great credit and you have a pretty good paying job, or you just don't have enough to put down, that's kind of the trade off. You usually don't have your FHA loan for 10 to 20 years. You'll probably refinance in like that 5th year to at least get rid of the mortgage insurance. And that's what I tell people too. Like, if you're trying to buy a home, if you're really curious about buying a home, and either you don't want to put a ton of money down, or you're like, gosh, that rate's really high, just look at the monthly payment. And if you're going to stay in the home for 5 to 7 years, then who cares what the interest rate is? Because we're kind of at the top of that cycle right now. And I mean, hopefully in a year we'll see rates come down to like 5%. It might even come the next few months. We don't know. But the problem, like we were just talking about, and what obviously this data is showing, is that it's the supply, demand, and employment. And as long as those two kind of stay even keel, we're going to see a kind of a consistent increase in prices from what I can tell. Now, obviously, South Carolina, you guys are blowing up. You guys are at 10% year over year in a quote unquote recession or housing downturn. That looks great to me. And it's good for you, right? Yeah, there's demand there, and it's an easy sell for you too, because it's like, hey, look, you can buy this house in for 220, and South Carolina beat out Seattle by 9% in year over year increase in value. So you're actually presenting a good value to your clients by telling them to buy in South Carolina in your area this year, regardless of what rates are doing.
Yeah,
So
it would. Well, I actually shared one of my listings with you. I was curious to ask you what you price wise, like how that fell. I mean, it was like a 3-car garage, 5-bedroom, 4.5 bath house. It was huge. And I was curious. I meant to ask you if you how that most people who move here from other cities. I've had people move here from Michigan and Pennsylvania and New York, and I even had one guy one time. I sent him some listings to take a look at, and he was like, "What's wrong with South Carolina?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "All the houses are so cheap."
yeah,
I said, "It's just we're a good steady market. We don't see the crazy highs, but we also don't see the crazy lows. It's just an even keeled." And I mentioned on our last pop up episode that we're a college town. We've got the military base here, so all those things kind of help fuel, fuel that market for us. Just a good steady market.
yeah, and that's a good thing too. And yeah, it's funny that people say like, oh, like what's wrong with South Carolina? I think it's just I think there's opportunity. That's what's and no one's seeing it, and that's another thing to think about too. Just from the data that I was looking at, I just see so much opportunity, especially for an East Coast city that's near, like in between North Carolina and like I mean I don't know exactly, but like you have North Carolina that's a pretty big banking hub, right? And then you have like New York, New Jersey, all these other like Pennsylvania to the north, and it's 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 not a. I mean, I could see why it's attractive and why there's increases in home prices out there, which is good stuff. And here's my credit tip of the day. I'm going to do every show. I'm going to try and do a credit tip of the day because I feel like there's a lot of like misinformation when it comes to credit. I'm going to start this out with the Sun Tzu quote: "Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win." And I thought that kind of made sense with a lot of people that maybe you interact with, but definitely who I interact with. They'll go in thinking, go looking at an open house, and especially in today's market. I mean, you had one that had like 3 offers on it, and your client was like, "Why are we even going to try?" Right? And I feel like a lot of people, they look at open houses, they talk to a realtor, and then they're like, "Oh, I want to make an offer on this house. I'm going to call a mortgage person on Monday." And so, we get that call on Monday, and they're like, "I want to put an offer on this house like now." And it's like, well, it doesn't really work that way. It's probably better that you get pre-approved prior to going out to a house. So it's like prepare yourself, especially in this market or any market in general, because there are 5 other people that are already pre-approved. They've been working with a lender, coming out with the strategy versus, oh, I just saw this house for $500,000. I want to buy it spot on and not prepared. And they don't know what their credit looks like. They don't know how much down payment, what programs they qualify for or don't qualify for. And it puts a lot of stress, I think, on the person that's trying to buy the house. And it puts a lot of stress on the mortgage professional for, maybe not telling them something they don't want to hear. And we don't ever want to do that as like professionals, but at the same time, I feel better about telling someone like, "Hey, this is what we can do, and this is like the news like now," but at least you kind of know that, okay, this is all you qualify for. I can't get you more than, XYZ. Um, and I just feel like people should be better prepared for when they're like, shopping for a home. I mean, you probably agree with that, but do you have clients like that where they're like, oh, I want to buy this house, and you're like, oh, where's your pre-approval letter? Oh, I don't have one. That kind of thing.
Well, if I get a hold of them first, I do exactly what you say, because in my sales pitch to have them call my lender, or a lender that there's a couple that I like, that I use regularly. Um, but my sales pitch is, hey, let's make sure you've looked to see if you can afford the payment, but let's have them dig in and see, hey, what is something you're probably are not considering is, how does the HOA dues affect your
Monthly.
your credit and your debt to income and that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. So I say, let's let them set the bar for us. They'll probably tell you can afford a lot more than you want to spend, and then we'll back
Yeah.
off from there,
Yeah.
and and shop in that price range. But
Sure.
I usually, if I submit an offer for a buyer, I'm sending a letter from the lender with the offer, so that
Yeah.
they see, hey, we're these guys. Hopefully, that's one of the things that gets you a little upper hand. Although that's a pretty it's fairly a good agent's going to do that. It's fairly common for them to include a pre-qualification letter just to
Yeah.
get that feeling
Sure.
of security.
Yeah. 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 And ultimately, the lender is the one that says yes or no on the money, right? The money situation, unless you have a cash offer like Wade does all the time. Um, and So before I get into my credit tip of the day, I want to answer Wade's question. So, which credit score has the most impact on home buying? So, there's three bureaus. So there's TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. So, when a mortgage company runs your credit, it'll run credit through all those agencies, and the different creditors that you have will report to all three of those agencies in some different type of pattern. They may not your creditors may not report to every single one, but on average, it's always the mid score that we're looking at when it comes to qualifying you for a regular purchase home. Now, for like a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, it depends on the institution. The bank I work for, we only use Experian. Um, but to answer your question, Wade, it's the mid score. So, like, let's say, for example, TransUnion gives you 760, and you have Experian that gives you 680, and Equifax gives you 720. We don't care about the 680 score. We don't care about the 760 or 780 or whatever it was. We care about the 740. So it could be as high as 850, which is insane, and it could be as low as 400, which I've seen before. But if the middle is, it's not an average, it's the middle. Some people get that misconception it's the average, it's the median. It's not. It's just the middle score between the three. That's what we base your rate and what um what what products you qualify for.
So
Um,
you could have a different agency have that middle score on any given loan, and that's the one that you would go with. So the different agencies are not weighted.
no, unless you have a specific product which your mortgage professional should know about. Like they'll say like, okay, this particular product takes into account your TransUnion score, or we only need to pull from Experian because we don't require for TransUnion or Equifax, and those are more kind of like advanced type loan products like cash out refis, excuse me, or like arm rates. It just depends on the what product you're looking at, but like your kind of bread and butter, like first time, either FHA, 5% down, 10, 3, 15, 20% down. It's going to look between the three agencies or whatever. But I think this is something that you should always do during your taxes. You should check your credit report. I don't know how many times I've talked to, and there's so many different resources nowadays. There's creditkarma.com. There's like all five of my credit cards or whatever I have, like they give me like an updated credit score, quote unquote, but they don't really give you a report. So I don't know how many times I've talked to someone being like, oh, you have a good credit score, but what's this collection or this utility bill that was shown as not paid 6 months ago? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, there's something that shows as like an unpaid collection, or you have this or maybe a card that's opened that you didn't know about, or just something you forget. I always recommend to people, like, every year during tax season, just go to checkyourcreditreport.org, not the .coms, but the .org. The U.S. government, because of like the Great Recession and Dodd-Frank, they ended up allowing a free credit report every year. It's only once a year, and it gives you like a list of all your creditors, whether you open them, close, what date, if you're paid up on time, all that stuff. It's really boring stuff, but it's at least you kind of have a leg up when you're going to apply for a car or for a personal line of credit or a home specifically. Just look at it every year. It's always a good idea to to look it up. And if you have questions about, like, oh, I've been compromised in my credit, I'm afraid of my credit, you can always go to these websites and freeze your credit account in case you're worried about that happening. Obviously keep it unfrozen if you're actually applying for a home or any type of credit. But yeah, I just always encourage people to go check your credit report. It's just good knowledge to have, and it's free. I mean, who doesn't like free? Maybe boring, but it's free and it protects you. So do you do this at all ever, or have you really looked into it?
It's been a while, but I mean,
Yeah.
the last time I did it, I found some things that should have been closed out long ago that were still kind of hanging around so it's definitely worth doing for sure.
Yeah. And again, there's so many, like, now, I mean, this is like 10 years ago. I used to do this every year, but now it's a little bit easier to get your report. I mean, I guess just insane. Just keep up on it and just make sure that you're aware of all the stuff that's going on, and it's free. So, yeah, so you can check your credit report, but not your score. Score's different. If you're gonna check your score and you think it's kind of bad, I'd probably pay to do that. However, if you think it's like pretty good, like 7, like 20s or higher, just apply for credit, and then that credit company will send you a copy of your credit score and what it's going for and all that stuff. So anyway, just a little tidbit for the day.
Excellent.
And Brad's The More You Know segment, we have some links to share for you guys here. Let me find these real quick. And he's going to talk about these some local stuff that he's an expert on, and I thought was really cool too. So this is your first headline we got. So let's hear it.
Yeah. So it's basically a reflection of what we just talked about on the slide. Notice that the sales were down, and so this is the reason. And you mentioned it doesn't make a lot of sense that interest rates go up, so buyers stop buying, but you didn't fix the inventory deficit that you were in. So when buyers jump back in the pool, there's still I don't know if it's on a slide that we're going to share, but I'll mention, and this is something I was thinking about today that's going to feel really weird when we get back to normal. A normal market, a normal average healthy market is a 6-month supply of inventory. So right now, I know it is. I know here, and I think these numbers, what we've talked about, kind of reflects this as a national trend. But I think we're somewhere in that 2 to 2.5 month supply.
Wow.
So if average normal is 6 months and we're less than half of that, it's going to feel so weird to finally have enough houses and not too many. But I think it's going to feel like it's too much. So, but there were some interesting tidbits in here. New listings of homes for sale fell 22.4% nationwide. That was according to Redfin. Realtor.com found that the number of homes newly listed for sale dropped 20%.
Wow.
Versus a year ago in March. Now you're taking what was, when you're talking about not being able to get off the phone, that would have been probably March of last year. So you're taking an extreme and comparing it to a year later after interest rates go up. But, but it still shows you that it's a really different market now compared to compared to before. And all right, U.S. mortgage rates. Okay,
Yeah.
so they're saying, yeah, exactly where you were saying. If you look, God, man, three, less than three.
2.77. I did a rate for 2.5 for a 20-year loan. That was my
Wow.
record. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I was telling people when they started going up. So if I look at this, I guess it would have been, yeah, like in that 2017, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I
Over
said
here.
it's gonna. I was telling people it starts going up. I said it's gonna hit 5 and just keep going. I mean, you may as well go ahead and buy now, and then it hits 5 and plummets. So you just never know. I mean, it was just trending up for a while there in the 20 teens, late
Mm-hmm.
20 teens, leading
Yeah.
up to. You just never know, but it didn't. I guess it didn't technically hit 7 according to this graph, but it's ticked down. I mean, what they're saying now, yeah, it's right on the cusp of if it didn't hit 7.
Yeah.
But where we're sitting now is exactly what you were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
In that 6.25, 6.5 range. So yeah, it's interesting stuff. I mean, it's the best. I'd be interested to see what you think about this, but it's not really a theory, but my observation is that the best buyers to have right now are ones who knew nothing about 3% interest rate. I mean,
Yeah.
if this is their normal, then we just, you just roll right into this. I mean, they've been renting and weren't looking, within the last year and a half to 2 years. So this is their normal.
Yeah.
This is what they know. So there's no hemming and hawing about, gosh, man, I wish it, and I just tell folks, like, you weren't ready to buy then. There's no point in even looking, thinking about that the rate has almost doubled. you
Yeah.
know just don't even think about it. So
And yeah, and it's this graph's really awesome that you provided. Now that I look at it, I remember when back here we were thinking that this arrow would go this way, and we were kind of planning for the rates to kind of shoot back up to 5.5%. I remember in the markets in general around this time, the Fed was giving whispers that he was gonna start raising rates again. And so that's probably why you saw this increase from 4.65 to around 5%, because there was that fear. And then the next Fed meeting, he stopped. And then, I mean, we're not even in pandemic yet. This is the pandemic kind of right here. And then, I mean, look at that. It's just insane. Um, no, that's I thought that it's funny to look at this graph now, and there's also fears too, like, okay, so the rates here, right? It matches, the '06, '07 crash, right? So it's actually higher. But what's the big kind of difference between 2006, 2007 and today? Um, in your
one of
opinion, what do you
yeah,
think
I
what do you
mean,
think's the
one of the
difference?
ones that I see is the inventory. The inventory is a big difference now.
Mhm,
Supply and demand is at play right
mhm.
now. There's a lot more people wanting. Houses are the FOMO book of the
They
week.
kind of are, really. I mean, they really are, especially now. I mean, and it's not really artificial. I mean, the Fed's trying to stop people from buying homes, but I think the big thing that we're not seeing 2008 and 2009 is employment is still really high. So I feel like as long as that employment stays there, I think I'm not saying, like, I'm not do whatever you want. Like, if you're afraid of the market tanking and that's to turn you from buying a house, but you have a family of four and you're in an apartment that Wade used to live in downtown Seattle, and you need to get out, buy a house. Like, honestly, like, it's that need type of thing right now, because it's just this is what's going to happen. Rates start to go down, like I was looking today. I mean, they're down a full point from when I quoted someone a week and a half ago. That's a big difference in rate. So what happens when rates start to go down? You start to be, like, really serious about buying a home. Price is going to go up again unless there's a recession. And that's what everyone's trying to say is like, oh, there's going to be a recession because of this. There might be, but I'm not a predictor of what the recession is. Or of trying to predict a recession or try to pinpoint a bottom or a top. I'm in a needs business kind of thing, So like, that's just kind of my approach to it. People are always going to want to buy a house. I don't care as long as they're employed and they have the ability to do it. In general, people are always going to want to buy a house. That's never been, a distasteful thing. Like even people that don't have a car, they may buy a condo. It's just that thing that it's that goal that I think a lot of people still want to have. And still the notion of like, I don't want to pay like my landlord, like, $1,000 a month. I'd rather pay, which sounds weird, right? I'd rather pay mortgage company $1,500 a month. At least I get to paint the walls whatever I want to paint. You know what I mean? And it's that sense of ownership. I think that's the American dream, really. That's what you're selling, right?
I was just about to say that tried and true phrase, the American dream. I mean, you're going to pay somebody's mortgage. You may as well pay your own.
Exactly.
I mean, that's kind of the feeling. So,
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of things, and we can probably talk about somewhere down the road as we look for topics. There's some interesting stuff I've seen that how the housing market responds. It maybe kind of surprisingly, it doesn't strictly follow recession type numbers. I mean, there's a lot of other variables that go into it. So, it's really interesting it's an interesting time to be doing this for sure.
Yeah. All right. What's your next slide we got here? Give me 1 second. Oh, this one's cool. I like this one. Oops. Reasons to sell your house in today's market. This is a funny one too. I like this one.
Yeah, so it's just an infographic that talks about all right, so yeah, okay, so this is exactly what I was talking about. This is okay, so look at your inventory numbers in 2008. So we're talking about interest rate was higher now than it was in 2008. Look at your inventory numbers there. It's that's a pretty significant difference, but it's going to feel so weird if you look at this. I mean, today we're sitting around 2.5 months supply of inventory, and neutral, not shaded to buyers, not shaded to sellers, is a 6 to 7 month supply. It is going to feel like we are swamped with houses when we finally get back to that point, because it's basically gonna it's gonna signify that the inventory has doubled from what it is now, just to get back to flush.
Right.
So that's really interesting to see. It's still a seller's market. I mean, you really, as a seller, dictate the terms on this.
Yeah, I think, we actually lately, I've got a couple of appraisals that are actually a little bit lower, and the sellers are just upset, and the buyers are surprised. They obviously have to come to a happy medium to kind of negotiate, because we can't finance more than the home's worth, and it's not crazy stuff, but it's like 20,000 less, 10,000 less on a $600,000 property, which percentage wise isn't a lot, but $10,000 is $10,000. I mean, it's a lot of cheese, right? But I mean, I haven't seen a lower appraisal since 2014, 2013, maybe. You definitely saw them in 2008, 2009, 2010, but that graph is just like, it just really doesn't. I think it just comes down to the supply and demand thing. I mean, people don't care because they've been renting, and it's like that whole, I just feel like people just don't have a choice. Like I had a friend kind of in this scenario where she bought her house in 2016, I want to say. So pretty good time to get a house. It was still pretty competitive. The house has probably doubled in value since she's moved in. So her mortgage is like, the value of the home's like $1 million. Her mortgage is like 400, and she bought the house for like 650, that kind of thing. And she's like, I'm gonna have kids soon, that kind of thing, and I want to buy a house ahead of that. But she's like, but The houses I'm looking at are outside of the city. However, they're bigger, but they're $1 million. And I don't want to have a rate that's 6.5% or, whatever. Um, what's what's funny is her question is, should I wait until rates come down? And I go, well, I think you're looking at the wrong picture here. You are in a needs-based kind of situation. You shouldn't really worry about the rate because it's just water cooler talk at this point. What you should do is, if you can swing it, buy the house for $1 million, put 20% down, and in a year or so, or rent your house out for a year or so, and then when rates start to tick down, guess what? The value of your home is going to go up another 5-10%. Sell it at that point, and either refinance your loan, because hopefully rates are going to go down to 5.5-5%, and use the money the proceeds from your home, and just put it into that house you're going to live in it for the next 30 years. Right? And the thing too is, like, when you're buying a house, like, sometimes I always ask people, and I'm sure you ask them the same thing too, how long are you going to be in this house for? When they were always asking about, like, how much money they're going to put down. Oh, I think I'll probably be and you can't predict the future, but, like, what do you project your how long you're gonna be in this house for? Oh gosh, at these rates, I never want to buy a house ever again. Okay, put 20% down then on the house. If they say, oh, it's like maybe 2 or 3 years, you kind of get some bigger, go FHA, go 5% down. You don't want to put all your eggs into this basket just in case the value isn't there by the time you sell it. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to think of that. I think there's a misconception as well, like, oh, I can't get a house because I don't have 20% down. Sellers don't give a shit. They just want, can I close a house in 30 days? Cool. I don't care if Bob, John, or Fernando buy my house. Oh, this guy can close in 20 days. I'll probably go with that guy because I'm moving out of the country in, 25. I want my money as soon as possible. I don't know. That's just kind of the perception I get. Yeah. So anyway, kind of going on a tangent there, but, like, it's that unfortunately the sellers do have the upper hand, so, like, those people that are trying to upgrade their house or just move out and they have a current house, they're at this weird kind of position in their financial standing that, oh my gosh, my rate's this much and I don't have any equity in my home, or I can't get this much for it, where it's like, really, if you're able to, or if you need to, sell your house and just upgrade to the new one, and just, if that's what your goal is, don't worry about the interest rate. Because you can always refinance down the road. I don't know if they're going to go back to 4.5, 3.5%. I doubt it, but ultimately it's kind of like, who cares?
Yeah, it used to be the average time was 5 to 7 years was what we always went by.
Yeah.
And then within the last couple of years, it was 3 to 5. And then kind of like closer to 3 was the top for a lot of people. I saw a lot of people obviously were moving when they, when they had all that equity in their, in their house.
Yeah.
I tell you, the people who really benefit right now are the empty nesters.
Yeah. Big time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if they're going to sell their house and downsize because the kids are gone, they're really in a prime spot.
We're having a lot of people do that too, where they're getting a departing residence HELOC. So they're using the equity in their home to put 20% down on the house, and then they sell the house and they use the proceeds to pay off the HELOC. Because a lot of people, like in their retired ages, 65 to 70, like they made good financial decisions by buying a house and paying it off the mortgage, but they don't have that 401k that people now have as kind of a normal thing. I did a departing resident HELOC for a client a while back, and she actually built a home east of the mountains, kind of like I was referring to, and she needed the equity from her home to basically buy the other house, kind of in tandem, versus like selling her home and then waiting on the cash to buy one. It's just easier transactionally, and it's a good thing. Yeah, like you said, empty nesters are making pretty good headway right now. So let's see. And this one, this was my favorite article that you had, the Gen Z article, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. So I shared it with you because it affected both of us.
Yeah.
So this, I heard this. We had a team meeting yesterday at my office.
Mhm.
We do a monthly team meeting. And by the way, I appreciate Wade and Michael having a good solid conversation in the chat. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us tonight. So at our team meeting, a lender, one of our preferred lenders for our office, came in and talked a little bit about what they were, some programs that they have going on. And she shared this information. And I asked her, I said, well, send me the article. I said, I'm curious where the data comes from. And she texted me a couple hours later and said, hey, I double checked. It's US Census is where they pulled this information. Um, so this is talking about the migration of people. So cities that Generation Z has been moving to most frequently, while other generations are leaving, and just kind of going through. And I would have, I guess, some idea of why it's happening here. If you go down to main findings, the report by Today's Homeowner found that Today's Homeowner is a reporting source, found that Gen Z seems to be flocking to large metropolitan areas more than the other generations, who are leaving major cities in large numbers because they say these areas are too expensive. So, get older and want to move to a less expensive area. That makes sense.
Yeah.
This next section was interesting. The data showed that many people are moving away from the Northeast region
Huh.
of the. Did it jump on me?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Go back up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Here
There.
we go.
The data showed, yeah, the bullet point there. The data showed that many people are moving away from the Northeast region of the country, with Florida, Texas, North Carolina, Arizona, and South Carolina being the states with the most population gain.
Huh.
So that was really interesting, especially for, of course, I had to figure out who Gen Z was first.
Right.
18 to 24 is the age range for Gen Zers. Um, so the cities where Gen Z is leaving. So if you go down past the related, um, yeah, report says that Gen Z seems to be moving out of Orlando, Denver, San Jose, and Newark. So however, they aren't leaving mega cities, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago.
Hmm.
I thought that was really, really interesting. Florida, it's interesting that they don't choose Florida as a destination, but Florida's seen a lot of growth. So cities Gen Z is moving to, according to census data, Gen Z is moving to the following cities in large numbers. And number 2, Columbia, South Carolina.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
Or
um yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I mean, I guess it is for business. I might be
yeah.
the, the I'm probably at the get off my lawn age at this point, but yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly great for business. I mean, it says something about, again, what we touched on last week. I think maybe the type of business, the mindset change of South. We're not just the place where The Patriot was filmed. We're doing electric car batteries and electric vehicles and stuff like that. So, but also being a college town probably affects those numbers to some degree as well.
Sure. And I think it's attractive for companies too to because I tell you, like 30 years ago, like in the mid 90s, Microsoft, obviously was like, on the Windows 95 was really like the breakthrough of Microsoft, right? But before then, they didn't have a big presence in the computer science school here at University of Washington. And Bill Gates and basically Microsoft like bought a wing in at UW, and they invested a lot of money into the university. And now, I mean, if you're trying to get the computer science program at University of Washington, it's pretty prestigious. I mean, other than like Stanford, obviously, and like that, and Harvard, MIT, they put a lot of money into that program, and I think it definitely encourages people that went to UW to stay here and, oh, I'm going to work for Microsoft. Like, why wouldn't I? And so that investment, quote unquote, right? Those companies are going to invest in those universities, hopefully, if it's like has that foundation, and it just makes more sense for them to not necessarily like get the cheap labor, but kind of pick the fruits of their labor, at least with Microsoft or whatever. But no, I think it's funny. Seattle is number 12 here. Seattle has kind of this funny, and Wade may attest to this, but like we always talk about how horrible the weather is, how like people are passive aggressive, like everything you can think of to not have people move here, because in 2012, 2011, it was very commonplace to, if you were sitting in a group of like 10 people, probably 30% of those people weren't from Seattle. In like 2015, 2016, 2017 is probably half. And now it's like, I mean, no one's from here anymore. It's weird to have someone who's from the area of Seattle from here. I thought so we always talk about how we don't want anyone to move here. And like, I mean, we grew really quick. I mean, we had Amazon's over here, Microsoft I was talking about earlier. Starbucks is a big company, obviously. And there's all these like little tech hubs, and I don't even want to get started with Boeing, and the naval base is here too, and there's an army base as well. Doesn't really have a huge growth impact in Seattle in general, but there's all these little different like pockets of like areas of Seattle that make it really expensive and kind of annoying sometimes to navigate.
Right.
But
I would really like to see the last few years of that same census data. Like if we could go back and gather the information, because I would imagine Columbia is nowhere to be found on that list. A year or two ago, and I would probably guess that Seattle's maybe a little higher on the list.
Yeah,
A couple years back.
I know. I think definitely like if you're talking about Seattle like proper, I would probably say that people moved out of the city during the pandemic just because of it got too expensive. It got to a point where it was like, geez, I gotta pay 800,000 for this townhouse where I can work from home now, and now I can have a dog and have a lawn and like live that city life, because there's areas, pockets of northern area of Seattle that now have Microsoft employees that work from home, which is kind of funny. And it's kind of built this like communities that were a little more blue collar, I guess you could say, are now like, oh gosh, all these like white collar like Microsoft, Amazon employees are now like messing up my neighborhood and not gentrifying it, but modernizing it, I guess you could say. And I think also like, hey, what's up, Connor? He is definitely a Seattle native when it comes down to being a Seattle native. I just think like, yeah, it's definitely like I have friends that are from like the northern areas of Seattle, and they're like, oh gosh, like they just built like 17 new homes here, and they look like cookie cutter and all that. But it's supply constraint. I mean, it's so hard, and Connor knows this. Like, it's really hard to build here, and it's really hard to and there's a lot of competitive companies that there's a lot of money here. I mean, you have you have Jeff Bezos, who's the richest man in the world, and then Bill Gates, Paul Allen, rest in peace. That's like top 10 billionaires like in the world, let alone like the country and stuff. Somebody had a question about, Fernando, where were you in Seattle during the grunge era? Dude, I went, okay, Brad, this may take you back. This is a little off topic, but I went to Kurt Cobain's like not funeral, but like there was like a like a oh gosh, like a remembrance after he died, and it was at the Seattle Center, which is like kind of like the center of Seattle, near where the Sonics used to play. Yeah, I Courtney Love like talked because they were dating back then, right? And she basically told everyone they were idiots for being there, and like she was upset. But yeah, memorial. Sorry, I couldn't think of that word, but yeah, dude, I had to have been like 10 years old when Kurt Cobain passed away. No, I was 12. Sorry, never mind. I was like 12 years old. And I think I said this last show, but Bruce Lee is actually buried here too. There's like a Bruce Lee exhibit, and you can actually go there and like get etchings of his grave and all that stuff. Dude, yeah, it was so much fun. I was like, my cousin took me, and we like ran so we wouldn't miss it, and like everyone was in the fountain like acting all crazy. But it was a good time. I feel like that generation, like that Gen X generation, really paved the way for like economies here in Seattle because it's so innovative, and it was kind of like, we're going to establish our own products and do our own things, and technology, which is this is to this day, it's such a hub for technology and very innovative type stuff. And yes, Wade, you are correct. Seattle has the most passive aggressive people I've ever seen. They say shit in the nicest way possible. It's annoying. I get passive sometimes, but like I'm more of like, I wouldn't say conflictive, but I'm more of a talker. Like I don't really like emailing people too much or texting, and I'm more of like, I'll call you. And I always get the like, go to voicemail, like, decline type of thing. But it's funny though, Seattleites love like people like you, Brad, that kind of easygoing, kind of like talk and like mood. We can listen to you talk all day, but as far as responses, like we just can't. It's a really funny culture over here,
Well,
man. It's pretty funny.
subscribe, and you can listen to me talk for an hour and a half.
Oh, I'm
Every
pretty sure
week.
50% of the people that I told the show about, they're like, "Is that Brad guy gonna be on?" Oh yeah, I'm subscribing.
That's
So
funny.
I don't know if
I
he'll be
was
here.
telling people about that at work. They got a kick out of it.
Oh man, bring them on too, man. I mean, I bet you they would love to hear all the South Carolina. We don't. Like when someone like when I have a friend who's from the South or has an accent or whatever come up here, dude. I mean, like it's just let them cook, man. It's like I'm like nothing over here. So, but it's a funny town. Bruce Lee. So if you see the Bruce Lee movie, there's pillars in the movie, and basically like that is, he's like in the, he's like, it's at University of Washington. That's an actual real thing. So
That's really
question.
neat.
Still angry about losing the Sonics. Yeah, still mad about that. I used to walk by Seattle Center on my way to Easy Street Records. Yes, Easy Street no longer exists. It is now a Chase Bank. So sorry.
Go
Sorry,
figure.
people. Yeah. So anyway. Well, that's our show for the day. I want to thank everyone for coming through. We are 7 live and all that. Brad, any closing thoughts for the group?
I am very pleased with the turnout. I appreciate you guys showing up for us, our first official show. Come back and hang out with us on Wednesdays. We appreciate you guys, and our goal is to be interactive. I mean, we want to hear our initial thought in doing this was, you're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. Let's kind of see if it was almost an experiment. Let's see what's going on where you are, what's going on where I am, and let's see if there's any let's see if there's any similarities or differences. And and to have the chat chime in and tell us what's going on where they are. I didn't anticipate that, but I like that. So tune in. If you got questions, we'll do our best to answer those questions, and I think it makes for a really interesting show moving forward. I'm super excited about it.
And Michael, to answer your question, I'll be at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific time. If we make adjustments to the time, in case it's like works better for other people, we may make adjustments. But for right now, it's gonna be 4:30 Pacific time every Wednesday. That way we don't get in, that way we don't mess with like Brian's channel. I know there's not a lot of comic people in here. I think half the people are comic people, but I don't want to do a show where I mess with other people that are part of the community. And then that's a great suggestion. I think I'll definitely we'll probably like commingle like how do you go about buying a house, that kind of thing. But it'll be pretty consistent. Like we'll probably talk about like current events, things to be on the lookout for. We'll probably focus a lot on like mortgages and like and buying a home. But I also think it's good that we focus on like how to preserve your money too. And I'll definitely try and talk about that. And Brad will keep up with this need to know segment type of thing. And I think
until NBC shuts it down. But
until
well,
NBC shuts us down, we go to like TBS or something or a different kind of thing. But I really enjoyed that, like that graph looking back at the rates and the years. It was kind of like a trip down memory lane a little bit for me. It was kind of scary. In those 2008, 2009, 2010 times, I was working in basically like default management of the company, going through all like the bad loans and trying to figure out how are we going to keep the bank afloat. It was a very scary time.
wow.
And I would say this though, for people that are like, oh, it's going to be 2008, 2009 again. I don't think it will be. It's just the data's just not there. Unemployment's not there. And it's such a different time money wise. I mean, we have freaking Bitcoin out there. That was a pipe dream, 10 years ago. Now it's normal. I mean, it's on CNBC's rolling ticker. It's just a different time now. And I think people have more choices. People have more freedom. Honestly, I think when it comes to like their money. And I hope that this channel helped you out today, and I hope we can help you guys out in the future and bring back our Sonics. Yeah, you heard it, Wade. That's right. Bring back our Sonics. We'll see you next Wednesday, same time. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, guys.